So I would say that with this meditation, Brother Michael, we've done most of the work of this panel conversation. So we can go to lunch now. No. Anytime we go on a journey, we put aside our lives and we choose the destination. We may buy a ticket for the train, we might buy a ticket for the plane, or get in our car, but we have a destination. And I think that the Double Foreign planning team, when they come together and offer us an invitation to come on a journey, when we visit Madhuban, you haven't only physically come here, but you are invited to take the soul on a journey. And they've called this journey from to Shanti. And that will be explored for the next few days. But the purpose of this panel especially is to let go, make sure that the traveler is here. And so thank you for this meditation. Is kind of a reminder not only to let go of all our roles and everything, but I found that this exercise really helped the mind to quieten down and to be fully present. Did you enjoy the meditation? Raise your hands. Yes. Oh, yes. We've got good feedback. This is making you an expert, right? This was the promise. This is the promise. Yes. So now I'll tell you a little bit more about the panelists, and we'll explore maybe how they plan their time to Madhuban, and also their first experience of the soul. But firstly, Brother Michael, apart from being Australian and 42 years in Gyan, which he already shared with everyone, Brother Michael is very involved with service through Peace of Mind. So I'll start with that. Peace of Mind retreat that you may all know. It's now 21 years running. And it's a fantastic chance for anyone from around the world who's interested to take the course. Usually from professional background, it might be people that may not come to the center otherwise and sit through the course. They're invited to come here to take at least the beginning. It used to be the 7 days course, right? And now they've narrowed down. Yeah, it's still the 7 days course. They get everything. The cycle, well, then they get everything. And there's about 250, 270 people coming every year. So if you add up for 21 years, it's served many souls from around the world. One thing I know about Brother Michael is that he's lived, the yajna is in his heart, and he lives close to the heart of the yajna. His presence is very loving. And loving in the sense that you feel that you belong. When he calls you sister, it's not sister, you're a Brahma Kumari sister and keep your distance. It's sister, you feel he's drawing you close. You're part of his family and he welcomes you. I felt that from the first time that I met him. And when you spend time in his company, you kind of expand, not physically, but you kind of expand and find courage, because I would say that he's a very giving and courageous soul. So it kind of, seeps in. You start to feel that. And what I'll ask Brother Michael is when was your first real experience of the soul? So what was your first experience of the soul? And secondly is, what draws you to Madhuban? So I'll let you think about this, and I'll present Sister Rita. Sister Rita, I've known, I think probably from my first time in Peace Village, which is 20 years ago now. You've been in knowledge for 27 years. And Sister Rita is married, still lives in the household, still works, and helps coordinate the activities of the center in Boston. Also helps with the activities in Peace Village, and is very much involved in international projects, especially those who are connected with the UN and the Call of the Time. You may all know the Call of the Time. It's another great project that brings together people of influence that not only they may not come to the center to take the course, they're usually very busy people, but they have an interest in spirituality. And when they come to the Call of the Time, they come to meet like-minded people who want to make a difference in the world. They want to uplift the world in some ways. And they are interested to explore how spirituality can help them. They may not go through the course at all during Call of the Time, but it's a question of maybe putting their ego aside and have meaningful conversation with others. So maybe you'll tell us a little bit more about this, but once Brother Michael has explained or explored or shared his first experience of the soul that moved you 42 years ago, or it might be recently, we never know, and what draws you to Madhaban, then I'll ask you to share the same.
Well, to be precise, at 3 o'clock on Saturday the 2nd of August in 1975, it was a specific time, it changed my life. Brother Charlie had been asked by Daddy Janki to bring his friends to Tennyson Road Centre, which was the only centre in England at the time, only one of 2 or 3 in the world, and to meet Daddy. And we were given the advanced meditation intensive. I think it was Genti Ben or Sister Sudesh said, when you meet Daddy, keep your eyes open and look here. That was meditation. So we went up to the little meditation room, which is now Baba's room, in what looked like a giant house, but it was a very small house. And we're all sitting down, and I heard the rustle of a sari, because I didn't know if Daddy was a man or a woman. And Daddy Janki sat in front of me, this close. Didn't say anything, just started what I now know is Drishti. And do you want the whole? Anyway, I'm sitting there and I knew this much about meditation, India, spirituality, less than 0. And we only went because Charlie said to come. And Daddy was giving Drishti to someone next to me who was asleep. Then she came to me. And you can imagine a Star Wars special effect experience. Above Daddy's head was this white light, this aura, and almost like spiritual light coming down, and this voice saying, you have arrived home, you are here, you belong to me, everything is okay. And not frightening, it was like absolute amazement. And I remember not being able to think. This intense experience was totally, I was unprepared for it, and it was only when Daddy took her Drishti away to the next person who was also asleep, I started to think, my God, what was that? Is that meditation? Is that what you get? Is that what happened? And I looked at other people in the room, and no one appeared to be having any And now, of course, I look back, and that was when my third eye opened. Daddy, Baba, through Daddy, opened my soul conscious awareness. And afterwards I asked Daddy, I said, what was that? And all she said, you are Baba's messengers. You are Baba's messengers.
And the voice was Daddy's, or was that in your head? Or
What do you think?
You tell us.
So here I am, 42 years later. And what brings me to Madhaban? Well, in case you hadn't noticed, God is here. This is the history of such monumental impact in the whole world history. And Shiv Baba comes into India, or actually British India originally, and then the Brits left. But in Madhuban, my experience, I walk in the footsteps of Brahma Baba. When I first saw Brahma Baba, I asked her sister, "Who is this?" And she said, "That's your father." And inside, I didn't say, "No, it's not, how could it be?" I said, "That's nice." Because I lost my own father when I was 7 years old. Joe and I, we grew up without a daddy. And now I had a father, so I wasn't an orphan. But when I walk into Baba's room, when I go into the history hall, when I walk around the courtyard, it's real. This is where God lived on the earthly plane. And Mama and Didi and Daddy, all the ancestor souls that are up here behind you. We obviously didn't know Baba or Mama, but we met. Mama's Brahmani was living in Abu, in the just on the other side of the Tower of Peace. So for me, that's why I come, to connect my soul with God, to meet God, and meet all you, meet the family. We were all deities together. We were the divine beings that we've been worshipping for 2,500 years. That's us. We know Krishna. We meet the soul of Krishna. Krishna. I'm a bit of a, I'm a bit like that, you know. But it's the history of Shiv Baba's incarnation that draws me here, day, night, 52 visits. I don't know how many visits, but a lot. And I can't get enough.
Thank you. And now before we go deeper into that experience, I'd like to hear from Sister Rita. Sister Rita is also very loving, but in a different way. Love has so many aspects. She's gentle and kind. And when you're in her company, you actually feel that you become sweet and introspective. And so it's a different quality, but also very loving. I'd like to hear, what was your first experience of the soul, and what draws you to Madhuban?
So, Om Shanti. So it was back in 1989 when I came in contact with the Brahma Kumaris, and I had been meeting with a group of professors from the local area in Boston about how each one of us were making progress on our spiritual path. And we used to get together and talk about where we were and what questions we were holding. What was the question? And the question I was holding in this last meeting I had with this group was, I really wanted to know who I was. And I wanted to know how the individual, connected to the collective of what was called this human family. I wanted to understand that. So there was one of the professors who ended up, by chance, coming to Madhuban for a conference on global cooperation for a better world. And he came back from the conference, and he came to my home, and he said, "Rita," he said, "I think I found your answer." He said, "I have the people who have your answer." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I bring them to your home?" And I said, "Why not? Of course, bring them." So at that time, Sharona Stillerman, who's now in Israel, was heading, she was the coordinator in Boston. She came to my home, and as soon as she walked in the door, I could feel an energy, because I'm kinesthetic by nature, but I could feel an energy that was so unique, so unique. So she and I never took the lessons, right? But we became, because of the position I was working in at the time and so forth, I became a contact soul. And as a contact soul, a friend of the Brahma Kumaris, she would lead me through guided meditations. And because I had been meditating in different ways prior to coming to the Brahma Kumaris, I was able to follow her lead in the guided meditation. So I just sort of went along with this meditation that was sort of similar, actually, Michael, to what you just did. And what happened was I could feel a separation happening in what I thought was my mind and my body. And at the end of that meditation, I said to myself, oh wow, I don't know what just happened to me, but there's something here that happened that I need to learn about. I need to learn more about. And so I began to do a lot more of the meditations with her. I'd call and I'd say, you want to have lunch? Come for lunch. I want to do more of these meditations. And then she began to explain to me in our luncheons, or I was immediately in service with her. We would be driving to a service thing, and she would start telling me about the soul. So that was my first introduction. But then what followed that very shortly afterwards was there was a launch of the book Visions of a Better World that was held at the United Nations. And Dadi Prakashmani came for that. And I was part of the team who had helped to create it. And the way things ended up was that Dadi Prakashmani sat on one side of the table, and I was sitting on the other side of the table, directly across from her. And we were in this dialogue for almost 4 hours. And through that time, she was giving me drishti. And I was supposedly helping to lead the dialogue, but I was so taken by this energy that was across the table that I sort of lost the connection with the group. And I had this experience of soul consciousness that I've never forgotten. It was just an incredible, incredible awareness. And from that time, I decided that I would step in and really, begin a practice. Because one of the questions I was asked was, when are you going to stop shopping and start practicing your meditation? And I said, well, when I find something where the teachings, are congruent in the people who are doing the teaching, I will then start. And I was so deeply moved by the congruence of the Brahma Kumaris that I was meeting in the service I was doing, that I knew that there was something pure and special. And so I just decided that I would start, and that's the way it began. And the first time that I came to Madhavan was in February of 1990. It was Shivratri, and there was a program. I don't know if it was you doing the program, but it was not called Peace of Mind, but it was called something. No, I thought you were involved with it. Yeah, I don't know. But what was amazing was that I came, and they were still considering me as a VIP. So I was treated with very kind-heartedly. I don't know how to express it, but during the visit, there was all of a sudden a Baba's meeting. Now I had no idea what was going on at Baba's meeting, but I went to Baba's meeting. And because I was in that state, that they had, with that status, I was sitting at the front. And it was Shivratri, when Baba comes to the stage and he hoists the flag. And so what happened was I was called down to the stage. And Baba took my hand. And he was standing, we were in Om Shanti Bhavan. He was standing on the stage, he was holding my hand, and the drishti that came from Baba, I held it, and I went out. I could just feel the soul going out and into connection with him in such a way that I thought I was going to implode, not explode, but implode. The power was, it was such an incredible experience to have that surge of energy going through me. And it was at that moment that I knew I was a soul. I knew that I had a father that was Shiv Baba. And I knew that I would spend the rest of my life in the practice of trying to achieve and maintain a connection that would allow me to be an instrument in his task.
Wonderful. And when you come to Madhuban now, is it to replicate this experience? What draws you to Madhuban?
Well, what I felt happened in that moment was I felt I was given a rebirth, like I was recharged to such an extent that when I went back, I mean, for the next 20 years, I served tirelessly. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. And I didn't want to waste a moment because I knew that I had been given the gift of being in the presence of God. And as one who had been in the presence of God, there were so many others that need to have that experience and to know about that experience that I just couldn't stop. So I've come back every year, and this, as Isabel mentioned, I live in a household with, I have a husband, and I had 4 children, and I have 5 grandchildren, and a very busy household, and I have a business that I own and operate, that I've operated over the years, and I was handling the Visions of a Better World Foundation for Baba for many years as well. But, you know, with all of that, I still wanted to dedicate my life to Baba, and I kept telling Dottie that it was impossible, that you know, I see it, I see the other Brahmins, I know they've done it, I know that God is present, but in my life, I don't think it's going to work. That's what I used to say to Dottie. And what Dottie said to me, which was amazing, she said, whatever you do, don't force anything. She said, just take one step, and Baba will give you 1,000 steps in return. And just take one more step. And then, after that, going to class, in the Murli, what Baba said, which was the first time, one of the first times I heard Murli, Baba says, this is the time when the impossible can become possible. You can stay in the household, you can stay in the world, and you can do this. And so I took that all right, I can do it. But what I really recognized was the foundation of my practice, the strength of my practice depended on coming to Madhuban in order for my foundation to remain strong. Because when you're living in the world, you're living in the family, you are tested to the hilt. You know, and you have to be able to go beyond those tests. Just coming, I come as a student, I come to learn, I come to practice, I come to be recharged so that I can go back out and do my seva, do the service from a place of a full moon. You know, not from one who's become tired, because it takes a lot to go beyond all of the activities we're doing in the world and to stay full while we're in that state of service, right? So that's why I come, just to learn.
Well, one thing that I would like to pick up on, wonderful stories, by the way, and we can see how we're all unique, right? We all have such different stories, experience, ways in. But there's something about Madhuban. There's something about being here that is different than just being at the center or at home doing our effort. And I'm wondering, and this is a question to you, there's a difference between my state of mind or my state of being that I can develop by being in the right company, that I can have when I have a powerful experience like this. But a state of being may not help me when I face a challenge. It may be very quickly swapped or taken over by an emotion, a strong emotion, and then your state of being that was very peaceful has now completely changed. What is making us solid is our stage. So there's a difference between my state of being and my stage. And you mentioned foundation, that you work on your foundation when you're here, which I think might be a synonym for stage. Yes, yeah. So what would you say as we're, we've entered the journey, and for each of us, we will have to ask ourselves, why am I coming to Madhuban? Why have I come this time? But maybe just exploring a little bit for we just have 15 minutes left, but we could explore what are the key elements of foundation. And another way of approaching this question would be, when you face very big challenges, and I know, especially for Michael, that you've been through a big challenge last year, losing your closest sister, service companion, someone you lived with for 30 odd years, right? Or more, 40 years. And she passed away, and so it meant many changes on many levels, emotionally and practically, and probably also challenged spiritually. So what is it that you draw on? What foundation do you now have developed that helps you and that you recommend that we do pay attention to? So who would like to start? Sister Rita, you've been volunteered.
Yeah. Well, this thing that you're mentioning about emotion, right, was one of the big things that I needed to learn about in coming to Baba. And, Dadi is very sweet, and Dadi is also a very accurate teacher. She tells you, at least she told us, exactly what it was that you were going to need to work on, right? And she said to me, she said, "You are too sensitive. Change it." And I said, well, I used to think my emotional was my being, living my life from my feelings, that it allowed me to be authentic in life. You never had to ask me what I was feeling, because it shows right on my face. And I think it still does, that whatever I'm feeling, it just shows. It's like a little window that everyone else in the world can see, because I don't hide it. I'm just in emotion. And I could become very touched easily by many challenges. In particular, I could feel a sadness, or I could feel an anger, or I could feel, many different things. And, or fear. I could feel fear was another feeling that I would have. And I really wanted to go beyond that, and beyond that. So I came to realize exactly what you're saying, that the way that we can master runaway feelings that are taking us more in a descending stage than an ascending stage is to be able to catch ourselves in real time when we are in the process of the challenge. So what do I mean by that? So we know that that when we react to something, to the challenge that's in front of us, we come to learn that we're reacting from that place of the sanskar, right? That there's a sanskar that's driving the feeling, that creates the attitude, that creates the thought, that creates the word, and then the action, the words and then the action. So the vision, words, and action. And so if I could learn to master at the time of impact of the emotion starting to churn, that I could put a full stop by simply coming in to the awareness of the old pattern playing out, and using the intellect, to stop it, to tell the mind to stop stop that thought, and then replacing that thought in real time. But in order to be there in order to connect with that, if I hadn't had a good morning meditation and Amrit Vela, if I hadn't listened to Murli, if I hadn't been attentive and aware of practicing something that day, I feel I could never do that. And,
because that's the morning exercise for the intellect.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that that's one way of really recognizing how important it is to check your stage. Because we have a lot of things that we hold inside that take us back into old patterns. And if in fact, we can walk in the awareness of our strength. I'll just tell you one more quick story. And this is about stage. So there was one time in my business, I did a lot of travel, a lot of travel. I was on airplanes all of the time. And one day I was in a plane, and the plane we were on a long journey, and we had left the homeland, and we were maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours into the flight. And the flight there was trouble. The plane started to rock, and then it started to rock more, and then it started to descend, and things started to come out of the luggage compartments, and people were screaming, and actually I was coming back from Madhaban at that time. I was coming back from Madhaban. So my stage was really strong, because this is what we do in Madhaban. We strengthen our stage, right? So what happened is, as the plane was going down and people screaming, and one woman holding on to my cuffs on my jacket, and I told her it was going to be okay. But because the stage being so strong, I was able to go to Baba. And what I said to Baba in that moment, I said, well, Baba, ready or not, here I come. It was over. And as soon as I said that, because it was a test, as soon as I said it, plane came back up. And so
We need a Brahmin on each plane.
So the importance of our stage, you never know when it's going to be needed. So that practice, I think, and particularly here in Madhaban is where we achieve it. So, Om Shanti.
So, Brother Michael, how do you come back to that peaceful, truthful core that you were guiding us to in the meditation in times of turbulence?
Well, to be really honest, one of the big tests we had was when our sister Margaret passed away suddenly last Easter. And many of you know her, some of you may not. But Marg was the Queen of Hearts. She was like Daddy Prakashmani as far as I was concerned. I've never met a woman so dedicated to being happy all the time. And she was like the brains trust of our family. There were 4 of us in the family, 3 brothers, 1 sister. And then she had a heart attack and a stroke, and off she went. And I can tell you the theory, but the reality was not. How could I say? I know I needed to do some more work. Because all the theory of that stuff and suddenly happens to someone else, and all of a sudden it was us. And the phone calls, day, night, is it our Margaret? And these are some big shots in the BKs, were shocked. Like, because Margaret helped set up the framework for the Global Functioning Network and did a lot of behind the scenes stuff with Genti Ben and all the big shots. But she was a kingmaker. She never took any... she was a great example to live with, and I think she handled the process going, as Nuerbai said, Margaret has a new dress and a new address. I think she handled that process better than the 3 boys that were left behind. But gradually obviously Baba's, the residual impact that we don't recognise that's there started to come out. I didn't handle it. There was lots of tears, lots of emotions, and I would have been surprised if there wasn't. And the hardest thing was dealing with the family's grief. We had 1,500 emails because she did Peace of Mind, right? So all these souls that came as guests, left as BKs, and started bringing people to Peace of Mind. You know, and a lot of people knew Margaret especially because she always stopped and talked to everyone. And she holds the world record for the time it takes to get to from the front gate at Bundabhavan to the dining room, 1 hour, 20 minutes. So she'd stop and talk to everyone. She was a great companion, great friend. And what got us through was the family, the souls that you don't think are close or have got a kind word sometimes to say, just surprised us. And the gratitude I feel to have been held in the hearts of so many great souls in the confluence age. I'm not very good at articulating like my learned colleague to my right is. What gets me is stories, personal connections, and the stories of all these souls behind. If you can, just take a look at some of these ancestor souls, because we knew most of them, and they all left their bodies. They all went on to another journey. And even though I wasn't aware of it, because just to put it into context, the first double foreigner season in Madhavan that I was part of was 20 people. That was it. So we got extra special love, nourishment, and there were no classes really in those days because Daddy Janki was locked up by Her Majesty's immigration in London. She couldn't leave London for 4 or 5 years. So that class experience you have with Daddy Janki isn't what we had. We had time with all these souls, and they told stories, great stories. And so that's what I found, and also I could speak for Joe and Frank, that's what sustained us through a very difficult period, emotionally and spiritually and psychically, personally. And we've come out the other end, and I don't, it's good if it takes 5,000 years for it to happen again. But it really is something you don't even notice you've got until, what do they say, when the tough get going, whatever that story is.
What I can hear though is a few things. One is the stories and the connection with the ancestor souls or the great souls, or the big shots like you call them, helps you to reawaken that memory of the greatness and the beauty that we have within, which is something that we do when we come to Madhuban. And secondly is the family responded so beautifully because of the blessings that they had for you all, because you did give selflessly for so many years, and not just through peace of mind, I would say. When I was sharing my experience of knowing you, and you played an amazing part in the beginning of my Brahmin life, maybe I never shared in details, but when I was trying to find my feet, just being in your company, you, Joe, Frank, and Margaret, there was such authenticity, and you are so real in the way that you lead your Brahmin life, that it's inspiring not to be like you, but to find our own feet and our own ways. And I think many people are grateful for that. And so you've maybe had 1,500 emails, but you had thousands more thoughts going your way. So I
had
think
100,000 angels by our sides, literally.
I would say so.
Could I say something? Yeah. Margaret was one of the first people that I met when I was here also, and she had a very big influence on me, and seeing the group of Margaret with the 3 brothers also made me realize that, well, maybe I could stay in my household and do something like this, because I know that there was a family group there. But one of the things that Michael said that I find very similar to what happened to me in my story, you said, I didn't know I had the capacity to do what I did until something tragic happened. And when I was on the plane, I would have never dreamed that I would have had the capacity to stay truly so calm. There was not a nerve in my body that was upset. the adrenaline of the physical was moving, but the soul was so stable that there was no problem in if it was going into the water or if it was going up, because the soul was stable. I would have never known I had a capacity to handle that, just like you would have never known to have the capacity to do what you've done, right? Which is a completely different story, different capacity, but so beautiful. The Baba, in times of need, I think because of the time we've been in Madhavan and what we've been able to take in building the foundation, that when we really, really need, that kind of emergence of our capacity to hold steady, it happens.
And really, Shiv Baba will surprise us all. We think we've, known it all, or not in an arrogant way, but Baba's, the knowledge technically finished when Brahma Baba became Avyakt. There was no more knowledge to get. And just the revised courses, and then the Avyakt Murlis that we hear are just the most dazzlingly beautiful stories. And what do they say in English? There's some more up his sleeve. It's now starting, because when we first came, it was a time of visions. And we could be here till next week if I told you some of the visions I've had. Baba's entertained me very royally, thank you very much. And Krishna is very beautiful, stunning, and heaven is worth waiting for, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbours. It's stunning. And what is real is that we're part of the solution. We sometimes in some way will be watching the news and God will be revealed. And it will blow us all away. We think we know it'll be some important person or and it'll be some 13-year-old sister in a centre somewhere. And whatever that scene looks like, but you get what I'm getting at, that we will see the transition from Kali Yuga to Satyug. And I can't wait. I love Sangam Yuga. I hope it lasts for another 100 years. But
I just had one more comment. I think when we're in Madhavan, we get exactly what we need. Whatever our next step is, that Baba provides it. And, when I think about the first probably 5 years that I came, the experiences that I had were strictly about soul consciousness. And then, in 1996, I was sitting in this hall, and Didi Sudesh was on stage. And at Amrit Villa, I began to get experiences of the subtle region, and in a way that I had never had it before. And that went on, that experience, it wasn't like just one morning at Amrit Villa. I was here for a couple of weeks, and I was having experiences every single day. And then I went home, and I began to practice that stage, the angelic stage, in a way that I had never known before. And each year there seemed to be something. And this year, it was really interesting for me, and I could still get teary because I'm still emotional to some degree, but what Baba has given me since I've been here is an experience of the stage of man above. I know soul consciousness, I know the practice of the angelic realm, I know a lot of different areas of practice to go into that incorporeal stage, but I didn't understand, as many years as I've been listening, to what man above was all about. And what I came to understand is that in that stage of man above, that our mind becomes so quiet that because we're not talking to Baba, we're just with Baba, and his thoughts become our thoughts. we listen, we hear. This has been my experience. I mean, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but I feel that that is the gift that I have received in being here this year. And now when I go back, you know, for the rest of my time, I will be practicing that stage of man above, based on the experience, the foundation of that experience that I've been given here. So, yeah.
Well, we've got to wrap up now, not because we've run out of things to talk about, but because time has come. I think some of you have come from Panda Bhavan and your bus is in 10 minutes' time. But a big, big, big heartfelt thank you for being so open and caring in the way that you shared.